Hi.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Super excited for our second GTM Live. This is a new format we're trying out. Again, this is not a super formal podcast, and it is a conversation among three of us. And feel free to ask questions in the meantime. And then in the discussion, we may also bring you up on stage, and so you can join the chat live as well. And today we're going to talk about how to leverage data and tech stack to fuel startup growth, which is a topic dear to my heart. Data is always so hard to figure out, and even for early stage companies, what is the data infrastructure or foundation we should build? When do we hire the first data person? Is the data person should be analyst or a data scientist, or should be a data engineer, or is the jack of all trades? Is all of those questions I deal with as a marketer every day, and it's very cross-functional, right? It can be engineering, can be product, and it can be a data function. So all of those are questions I have. So I'm super excited to have Bei and Chloe today join us and talking about everything data. So I will have them introduce themselves. Chloe, go first.
All right, we're gonna nerd out on data. I'm super excited about this. Super nice to meet everyone here, and very excited to be in this session with ExponentialX, a great group of growth advisor here. I come from a very specific data, very nerdy background. So my last full-time job, I was at the Athletics with VP of data, building up the data team from 1 person to 16 before I left. Before that, I was also working in the data science, hopping between data science and analytic functions at Loom and before that, Doximity. Right now, I'm an advisor and also consulting for different startups, mostly helping them to establish the early data foundation to support and fuel growth. So in the past, I've consulted with Crew App, Wonder Schools, Checkers. Now I'm working with a venture fund, actually advising some of the companies, their portfolio companies as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Bei, do you want
to? Yeah, briefly. So hi, everyone. This is Bei here, for those who don't know me. I also came from a very heavy data and technical background, and gradually expand the scope into the more of a growth strategy space. But data has always been part of my vertical, whereas everything is layering on top. Similar, I guess, some similarity with Chloe. My last full-time in Grammarly, I joined them. I was really fortunate to join them in 2020 to be their first marketing data science person, building out the team. So starting from a 0 person and up to double digits. Help build a data science team to cover all the B2C and the B2B analytics needs at the time. And before Grammarly, I joined Point, which is a fintech, and also building the growth org, whereas the data was very much of the core growth engine. So building that function from the startup, and later on it became a revenue engine that accounts for over 80% of the revenue at the end. Along the way, I also advise a few companies. Mostly, half of them are about the go-to-market strategy. The other half are definitely very heavy on the data. I try to do what's due to help a few companies to, let's say, establish their LTV framework, set up their marketing attribution, how to understand the marketing measurement for different stages, and also including define their retention metrics, and etc. So somewhat similar, right, to Chloe, just slightly different logos. But it's been very diverse. So I do have the opportunity to touch on a lot of tech stack and have some point of view on different stages, have a radically different ways to tackle the data challenges. So happy to share more in the session later on.
Awesome. Yeah. Very briefly, I am coming from a growth marketing background. I run performance marketing, growth marketing at places like Slack, Loom, Miro, and Google. So in my role, I work a lot with data teams. Sometimes they're in the form of marketing ops and marketing systems and tech stack. Sometimes it's in the form of marketing analytics, looking at the data that we have, especially in a growth marketing function. and we deal with a lot of data, especially when we do digital marketing. Attribution is, of course, like always a $1 million question. Attribution within digital channels and attribution between sales and marketing. So a lot of that conversation as well. So I'm really excited to have two data experts today. So like just to open up and based on your recent or most memorable experience working with various startups, and what are the frameworks you have to tackle these tech stack and data challenges? Bei, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure thing. So the framework, I would say I normally do a few things to get to diagnose, right, the bigger picture before dive deeper, right? The step one, normally I tend to, this is something I used to write in my own blog. Happy to share here in a few seconds. The first thing is I will analyze the data maturity in the 4-layer approach, right? First layer is basically the data landscape, data storage, and the organization where the data is stored. And the second layer would be the basic BI and the simple analytics layer, right? Do we have a way to really understand the health in the most fundamental form? And the third layer would be more of an advanced analytics, right? Where do we need more of a data modeling or predictive modeling to get to know the situation a little more into the depths? And then the fourth layer is really the strategy and the communication, right? Do we have the right way, the right person to connect the data into the outcome? So I would evaluate that in any context to understand what's the status and the maturity across the board. That's the one dimension, I would say, probably on the vertical side, right? And the horizontal wise, I tend to be very, because I happen to be in the company at a very different stage. So Point, I joined at the late Series A, and the Grammarly kind of mid stage, and I also work on the IPO stage companies. And so I learned, I guess I learned to diagnose, right, whether this company is 0 to 1 or 1 to 10 or 10 to 100. So, and because different stage require the balance between the quality and the speed very differently. So it's good to be aware of the level of rigor needed for the right stage. And the last one is knowing that maturity, knowing that stage, choose the right people for the job, right? So this is always need a team. It's a teamwork. So sometimes depending on the diagnose, it determines what kind of profile I need to bring in to solve the problem. It could be all kinds of roles, right? Data eng or BI and logic data scientist. Sometimes it's the title is very confusing along the way, but the actual conversation can help me understand whether the right person is set up for the success. So I'll pause here. Right, Chloe, anything to add from your end?
Yeah, I think what I had maybe is a little less about framework, but I think I really love the way that you laid it out, where 0 to 1, 1 to n, and the maturity stage. Based off the stage of the company, your data need is quite different. So when you're thinking about data tech or tech stack you want to bring in-house, I want people to be more intentional about what you're trying to bring. It's not because everybody else is using this tool, let's bring these tools in-house, because every single data tool, not just because it's costly to implement, to integrate that into your house, but also it's hard to move it out. So you have to be very intentional what I need at this stage, in order to think about what I need to choose, which tool I need to choose for this stage. Usually, really for the early stage, you're thinking more on the tracking side. What are the data? How do I track the right data to report? It doesn't have to be complicated, but what are the important piece of data that I need to answer my business question today and help my business to move forward? some of the more complicated data efforts, like data science efforts, like if you think about attribution model, there could be first click, last click, multi-touch, all of that, but maybe very early stage, you want to at least be able to just report on that accurately. So thinking less on the complicated data science effort, really thinking about how do I support high quality, accurate reporting that can sustain for a long time.
And Chloe, this was really interesting because I work with a lot of companies who are relatively early stage, who are thinking about how to structure the data and do's and don't do's, and like, can you go a little deeper on like how do we think about structuring data from early stage?
When you say structure, you're thinking about capturing the data, or you're thinking about like building the centralized data? Or I think if you think from maturity perspective, if you're at the 0 to 1 stage, or maybe even -1 to 0, so you're trying to figure out your product market fit, what you need most of the time is velocity. So at this time, you can even just bring some third-party vendor. Now, like there's tons of tools like Amplitude, there's Mixed Panel. It's something that's easy to implement, very low cost, and then you can start iterating on getting quick data feedbacks and iterating on your decisions. But the thing starting to get complicated is when you start shifting between stage. When you go from zero, when you're starting to find product market, but have a little bit more engineers resource in-house, now you need to think about how do I centralize all of this data. Now the question is, okay, do I need to keep all those early stage tools still in-house, or do I need to dump them and start building something new, right? Those are all the questions that we need to kind of anticipate, and so you know what to expect at each stage. Does it help?
That's really helpful, and we didn't prepare for this, but I'm personally really curious, so I'm just gonna throw it out.
Sure.
So in your opinion, so like, I think a lot of startups in early stage will do one of those existing tools, like coming like marketing analytics, we use just Google Analytics, right? Like, or Amplitude for like product analytics, etc. Most of startups will start that way. Do you anticipate, let's say, once we raise Series B, Series C, like once we get more mature, once we get X number of users or customers, there will be a change. In recent years, there's a lot of, do you centralize all your data into a Snowflake or like a central data warehouse and getting everything into that one? Like, where do you stand on that? Like, debate?
Oh my God, I have so much opinion on this. Absolutely, as early as possible. I talked to so many head of data and at the Series B, C stage, and their I guess complaints are all about, oh, we have all of these tools and then we don't know which one is really the source of truth. So my recommendation is, like, at the early stage, use tools like Mixed Panel, Amplitude. Those, some of them are even, they have free tiers, go with that. But as soon as you start moving toward even a Series A stage, now you have a couple thousand users, a couple hundred, into like the thousands of user stage, and then you need to understand more in depth about your segmentations, all of that. This is where you need to start thinking about bringing a early data hire to just thinking about bringing all the everything into a centralized place. Even if it's small, that's fine. But then you're setting up the foundation in the right. You give yourself a right footing to grow in the future. And I think that's one of the flaws I've seen in so many data teams, is that they don't really think building data efforts, you have to build it with the need that you currently need, but with the eye of what could happen in the future, so that you're ready, because the change is very costly for all the data stack. So you have to have an eye toward what I need to prepare at least 2-3 years down the road. Whatever stack I'm using, I have to use it for another 2-3 years. Yeah.
Yeah, if I can add some to that based on my data points, right? So to play the empathy on the other side a little bit, I agree, right? The earlier, the easier, right? You save all the pains down the road. But my own experience working with the different stage of the company, I kind of can understand. In the earlier stage, even in the mid stage, it tend to be very hard to prioritize data engineer over product engineer, right? So especially that the data engineer typically don't really have a standardized playbook, right? The architecture changes, the foundation changes. I realize a lot of data engineers I talk to, they have a very different understanding of how the infrastructure should work out. So sometimes depending on which data engineer the founder is working with, the outcome could be radically different. I'll give some examples. So with the collab where I was acting as a interim CMO for the last half a year, we decided not to do nothing, right? We still use the GA4 to record things. We barely had 2 tables in the SQL to do the business, but given the stage, it was okay. And the other data points is I one of the Series A company I advise that has an ARR of over $10 million. Even up to that point, they are still using the GA4 as a primary reporting tool, right? So they don't have a relational database. And it doesn't really quite impact the business growth because they focus on the product building and the product bringing a lot of the growth. So I guess at that point, right, there is not a strong sense of urgency. Hey, we have something to fix, right? But what would happen is, let's say for Grammarly, when I joined in the year 2020, I believe that's like year 12 year into the business, and they still didn't have relational database. And at that time, the company finally decided to migrate from an internal warehouse into a Databricks. And that migration was a huge pain, was extremely expensive at that stage. So I guess my takeaway is I do think sometimes it is okay to delay a little bit, but on the other hand, I do think right now with the help of Snowflake, right, AWS, with the help of the DBT that does the data modeling, now it's a lot easier to build things, right? If we rewind the time back to 5 years ago, building a data foundation needing expensive people, needing expensive work. But right now, I think the clarity is a lot better, and the cost of building a good foundation is a lot better. So this is actually where I would highly suggest the founding team at an early stage, right? Maybe talk to a data advisor or who has done the data setup. It's not nearly as hard to do it right in the beginning. So hopefully that will merge to what you said, Chloe. It's doable, and it's doable by the way lower price today than a couple years ago.
And data is always there. I think I was chatting with a CTO earlier this week, and then we were talking about how AI is changing SaaS software's interaction. Long story short, we arrive at the conclusion where every single SaaS, if you think about them, is some kind of data model and the user interface building on top of that. So the data is there day one. When you build your software, when you have some kind of interactions of people using your software, there's already data that you're surfacing to your users and data that you should be capturing. So.
So it sounds like having a centralized data warehouse could be something that like companies should consider, regardless whether they're like B2B, B2C. Like having a centralized data warehouse where you get all the data points into one place, where data engineers or data scientists can query easily, probably sets you up for a scaling solution.
Yeah. I think today that should be a no-brainer. Today you have a Fivetran to pipeline the data. You have
very easy
to model the data. You have a natural language to SQL tools. You don't even need to write a SQL to query the data. Right? There is just no excuse anymore.
What are some of the tools that you use to structure this data pipeline? You mentioned Fivetran. You mentioned maybe like some of the things that I used before is also like Census for reverse ETL. Like, what are some of the tools to share with the audience?
There's Stitch Data. So there's a data pipelining tool which can pipe your data from third-party vendor to a centralized database. So the centralized database, I think they mentioned a little bit. There's Snowflake. You can use Redshift. There's Google BigQuery. So a lot of them actually have their free tiers as well. And then there's a pipelining tool that can pipe the data from third-party vendors. So if you have HubSpot, you have Salesforce, all of them. So you can use Stitch Data. There you can use Fivetran. I think there's a couple new breed of data connector tools out there as well. Did I miss anything, Bei? And then there's like the transformation tools.
Yeah, yeah. It's this is where we probably could use a diagram, right? But happy to. I'm gonna post a diagram I draw separately in the community later on. Yeah, census. There you go. Right, census. Great to see you, Leslie. Right, census is good ETL, reverse ETL tool. Right. So the I think you touch on pretty much. It's
Oh,
yeah,
equals is a great one. There's a lot of AI that can do analysis on your CSV type of tool out there too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm using. Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I'm been using hyperquery very extensively. It's built by a few Airbnb data scientists, right? You can connect to the data, you can query the data, you can right share everything. Kind of save a lot of effort from the data engine side. So I like those two. I know Hong has a lot of good insights. He came from Robinhood and has gone through a lot of gone through some data challenges. So Hong, do you want to come to the stage and share your thoughts? All right, let's do this. Why not come over? All right, let me try this. Let me try how this works. Okay. Yeah, Hong has a really good background from prior Capital One, everything organized, and then jump into the Robinhood, deal with the high velocity of the data. So I bet there you go. Good to have you. Good to have you.
Happy Friday.
So, happy Friday. So you're typing a few really good insights on the challenges and the lessons learned, right? Why not maybe share a bit of what you see, and we'll learn from you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for inviting me. So I will probably expand a little bit about what I said in the chat, but please feel free to stop me. And also happy to answer any questions based on my experience. So I worked I experienced a product that from 0 to 1, and as the only data scientist for that product, we did a lot of things and also had a lot of learnings. So one of the things we learned at the beginning when we prepare for a product launch to their hyper growth stage is to invest data as early as possible, as Chloe said, so that you can have everything set up to make quick decisions when you even before you launch the product, after you launch the product, to get a better sense of the health state of your business, and what to prioritize, like your engineer team, your product designers, like whether it's the early funnel of your product or mid funnel or the lower funnel. I think those are something that data could help to answer. And if you have a very good data stack at the beginning, that will make your decision process much easier. And have some data investment in data experts would also be really helpful. So one quick example is like conversion rate. So probably everyone here has heard about this metric, and this conversion rate could mean very different things. Depends on how you define it, what will be the numerator and denominator, what is the data source behind, whether the data is trustworthy. So having a data expert who knows the in and out and have the right tool for them would be very powerful for product launch and to help the business to grow, no matter it's from 0 to 1 or 1 to 10, even to 100.
Mm-hmm. Hong, I have a follow-up question. It's like the question we were discussing before, like early stage, you use existing tools, and later stage, you sort of have a centralized data warehouse. Have you seen that like yourself in any of the companies you worked with? And how does that transition look like? And what are some things to keep in mind?
Yeah, so one thing I could share, probably it's not from a startup point, but it's from my previous experience when I was working at Capital One, and Bei probably also know this. Our Capital One CEO was really into the machine learning, and I think probably it's one of the company in the financial service industry who invested a lot in migrating the data warehouse from the traditional like Oracle or some other old like system into AWS, into Snowflake and Databricks to build more real-time machine learning models to help like making decisions on which user to approve for their credit card and what credit line to give to them. So I think that's one example I can think of. But for my current company, I didn't experience like from a very small company to current stage. So not much to share there. But I think this is a very, very good question. That's almost all companies from different stages need to ask themselves and like whether it's the right time and when to like invest more in data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I think Capital One is like the OG for like using data for growing businesses, right? Like they were so good at like building those risk models and like actually like getting a lot of the like traditionally considered risky demographics to have the credit card. I still remember receiving like a Capital One like letter when I was a new immigrant. It has no credit history, but like they know, okay, like this person feels like they can pay off their credit card. Like so all of those really fuels their growth. And I know it's like that is like a lot of the talent in data science actually coming originally from Capital One.
Yeah. I think in current years, a lot of companies realize even they are not in tech industry, like from traditional industries, they realize the power of data and the value of the data. So they started to invest more and hire people who have already done this before, probably like you guys, to help them to do this type of migration sooner than later.
Yeah.
I just remember I can share a little bit about this like early stage transition. I used to work with a company that they started off with no centralized database, and then they download a bunch of CSVs from Stripe and all of that doing analysis, whatnot. But they have like for behavior data, they use Amplitude to track user behavior data. They're on the free tiers, and then once you're building inside Amplitude, it's very hard to say I want to move off of it. And it's so easy to make the decision to say, oh, let's pay for the next tier because we already have so much stuff in there. But then once you're at the stage where you need to track even more in-depth data that Amplitude doesn't support, then you're getting into the conflict of, oh, I have two versions of behavior data. Which one should I be using? Right? There's the other reason of why you need to move off of a bunch of third-party vendor tools earlier, so that you don't have to feel you're obligated to, you're stuck with the tools. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah. Looks like Leslie has some good insights too. Leslie from Stripe and Figma. Yeah. Do you want to come on stage, Leslie?
Leslie, you want to come up? Maybe next time. Okay. Yeah, feel free to type. But thank you, Hong. Thank you for sharing. Right, I think Capital One provides a more massive face. I've seen Capital One went from the Oracle into the Hadoop, and after a year shifted from Hadoop to AWS. That was a massive project. But today, what I been through is one of the company I work with, where I was building the data foundation. They did move from Oracle into the Snowflake plus dbt with one person, and they had maybe 20 tables, so nothing too crazy. But with that clarity, a few months, it was one person. They did a beautiful migration. So like I said, it's doable. Do it. Okay.
I think one of the major challenge you touch upon a little bit is the team, right? The resourcing. I encounter it myself. Like sometimes there's a confusion. It's like, okay, should it be like the first data hire? Should it be a data analyst to do some reporting and like analyzing our existing data? Should we have a data scientist, and doing it like a more massive scale, or should we is the job of like data a functional role, or is it like a data role, or like who manages this person? Who does this person report to? Like, what are your thoughts around like building early data teams, and who should that hire be?
Right, Chloe, you want to Hong, feel free to
yeah.
hang out here and and chime in. Or, right. So Chloe, you first, and
Hong is like the first data hire. You
there you
got a
go.
real example right here. I actually have a playbook I can share with that with you guys later on about like what are the questions you need to ask, what are the qualities and skill set you're looking for the first data hire. Yes, but in general, the first data hire, I mean, we touch on a little bit. Maybe it's not as obvious. The first one, a lot of them are building foundations. It's about bringing things together into a centralized place. So usually, the first hire, I would lean a little bit more toward the technical hire side. So more on the somebody who has data engineering skills, but also interested in doing analysis. Really, I think the ideal hire, the unicorn hire, is somebody who's more generalist but more toward the technical side. I would go against hiring a data scientist as your first hire, but that there's also exceptions. There's like very generalist data scientists who can do both modeling and data engineering and some analytic work. That's again your unicorn hires, right? But if you're thinking about like specific data scientists who can build who specialize in, I don't know, like marketing attributions or some like specific model type or specific domain knowledge, maybe not as your first hire, unless your company is doing something with this, your product differentiator is the data science model. So I worked with a company before where their product differentiator is a dynamic pricing. And that's no brainer. You need to think about data science effort very early on. But if you're just a general like a SaaS software or marketplace, maybe not so early for a data science hire.
Yeah, I can add on top. I agree with the infrastructure, the structure here. The data engine is probably the first one, right? Without that, there is nothing to cook. Right? So the next one is I think I agree. The more generalist, right? Hopefully people, the jack of all trades might be a better to bring on to connect the dots. Because one of the lessons, I've been the first data hire a few times, and the reason I was brought on is because I'm more generalist than research data scientist. And one of the things I did observe when I joined Grammarly is when I joined there, they had a team of pretty hardcore data scientists, right? All PhDs and right, all very very deep, and it all great, all wonderful, great talents, but it caused a lot of frictions. Right? One is the data wasn't there for them to build anything advanced. Off, right? So there are frustrations, right? They couldn't really maximize their efforts. On the second part is also, depending on the level of a business acumen, right? There were also broken communication between them and some of the business holders, right? Then when if the team were brought in with anticipation that I'm going to do advanced research, whereas there is no data and there are more business needs, often doesn't require advanced research, it's caused a lot of problems. So one of the things we did in the Grammarly is we filled the team with very different profiles, right? Some are more of a channel analytics, some are more experimentation, some are more of a BI. So with the diversity, we're able to fill the gap along the value chain. And then the research data scientists can focus on what they do. So a lot better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you touched upon some really good points. And like, so taking a step back, can you define the different roles and responsibilities for analysts, like marketing analysts or analysts, data scientists, marketing ops, and data engineers?
Yeah, this is my favorite and my least favorite topic, right? Part of me. It's I think I was halfway through one of my article about why the data roles are so confusing, because I think I agree the data engine is probably more well defined, but a lot of analysts, business analysts, operation analysts, or data scientists, it's very hard to draw a line. Right, different company, you probably see very different title doing exactly the same thing. I'm not a fan, right? I think traditionally data scientists tend to be a little bit more research oriented, right? Whereas the analytics is a little bit more business oriented, but it's all mixed up. It's very confusing. So I wish things are easier on that one. So anything to add from you, Chloe?
I was gonna say even data engineering is very confusing nowadays too, because they can do analytic engineering, they can do like internal toolings. There's also a very wide range of skills. I think it's more maybe thinking more from the need perspective. They're thinking moving data from a raw stage to insight stage to predictive stage. So I think that's how I would think about the capabilities, maybe not necessarily the title. So if you think about capabilities, early stage, you need people who can do raw. So the fourth stage, right? Raw transformation. You need to clean up your data, transform it into reportable format. And then your insights, you need to analyze the data. And then the last one is predictive recommendations, right? That's the traditional data science. So you can think about the skill set, the raw and the transformation, those are data engineering, analytic engineering skill set. And then from transformation to insights, that's a lot of analysts. Sometimes they call data scientists as well. So a lot of analysts, that's like looking into your data and then understand how to calculate KPIs, derive segmentations, understanding where to business opportunities. So those are just driving insights. And then if you go from the last two stage insights to predictive, you want to understand what is the future 24-month, 36-month LTV looks like. What is that can help you to understand your future ROIs, all of that. That's in the data science zone. Yeah.
And from a reporting structure perspective, do you think
good question.
Should it report into functions, or should it report into a head of data, or should it report into like I've seen companies having the data person reporting into like marketing ops, or just like finance also. Like different companies have different philosophies. What do you see are pros and cons for some of the reporting structures?
Wait, you want to go first?
Okay, yeah. So depending on the stage, I've been through the vertical. I've worked through the horizontal too. I think in the beginning, in the early to mid stage, I'm a huge fan of horizontal org. I think the data should be its own function, overseeing the whole company, whether reporting to chief data officer or even the CEO or CTO, doesn't matter. But it needs to be end to end. That has all roles, right? Data eng and the product analytics and marketing analytics, just so that team is overseeing the health of the company. As the company gets more maturity, when things are more standardized, it's okay to assign the team deeper into the business unit, and then have a dotted line, right, connecting across different teams. One specific example in Grammarly, I think is a good example. When I was hired, I was reporting to the CMO at the time, right, and it has a lot of issues. Because the time the product data people and the marketing data people are very different, there are silos. There are cases where in the product launch, right, product data folks will stop right here during the launch and pass everything to marketing. The product is launched, you figure out everything else, right? And it causes a huge disconnection. It doesn't facilitate the end-to-end thinking, which is critical for startup environment. So I actually, one thing I'm proud of doing is actually did a lot of effort combining the data team in Grammarly to be a horizontal team, so that everyone can, whether you are doing the data eng or product or marketing, you always think about end to end, right? Nobody stops until the project is done. And it's also helpful in startup where it tend to be missing a lot of structure and process. It's just easier for these people of the same job title to be in the same group, just so they standardize the way of doing things before they form the bad habits, right? That might be very different depending on the stakeholder they work with. I think in the case of Capital One, right, it's so big, right? It has to be deep into the BU. But in Grammarly, a lot of startups in the Silicon Valley, just horizontal would be a better option.
Yeah, Leslie, who works at Stripe and Figma, said a lot of companies require data science to be very multifunctional. So data science, like a data scientist, is like data analyst plus data engineers. I think that's also a very like I've seen that like at a couple of places. And according to Leslie, data analysts working on defining questions, like building dashboards and insights. Data scientists working on more ambiguous problems, like how to increase retention, how to increase activation, and some data people reporting into head of marketing, some data people report into head of engineer. I think that's really good perspective. When I look back to the Slack days, we have a horizontal data team, data analyst team, who they all report to head of analytics, and then you have marketing analyst dedicated to marketing team, product analysts dedicated to product team, and then sales analysts dedicated to sales team. So on a day-to-day basis, the marketing analysts working with me very closely on like my analytics needs, working on attribution, working on various like honestly, like both analyst work and data scientist work. And then they can also go back to their pod for and sharing experiences across the analyst team, so that they can also learn from each other and the best practices. So I think that's a really good, like it's a good structure for companies who are like at certain scale, which you want to have dedicated analyst and a scientist resources, but also like they can share learnings.
I think it's also kind of depending on the stage. If you're at the very early stage where you only have 1 or 2 data people that you have as a resource for your company, a lot of this really depending on your company strategy. Sometimes I advise analysts and data scientists who's looking for a job. I always ask the question, where is the data sit in this company? And you can think about the strategy, whether the sitting makes sense for that business strategy. That's how you know if you can make an impact or not. Because if you put the data team under technology team, under your CTO, that means your data team for sure will be very technical driven. So that's where a lot of time probably data engineering, data science team are gonna, if you see that's the early stages how people put it together, then you know this data science team is going to drive a lot of the data infrastructures and then some of the backend infrastructure, even from a data science perspective. But if you see a data team that's being placed under product team, that means this company wants to, or at least that should show the objective, or if you're the founder, you should think about where you want to place it. But that means you want your data driving your product growth, right? If it's under marketing, that means your marketing needs to be driven. I'm just assuming there's only one data function right now, and where is you're placing this function. If you're placing a data team and they're reporting to your CEO, that means this data function will be more of an operational role. So they work a lot with the business performance side and really setting up OKRs and KPIs for multiple teams. So that's how I would think about it. Some company also place their data team and their finance team as their first way. That's where they kind of that means this company again is very operational driven. They really care about their gross margins, reporting on their tags, all of that. But of course, later when you get to scale, then I think this what you guys just mentioned about tech makes tons of sense. It's centralized and you have a hub and spoke format, because you do need data people to be in the domain experts, so they're close to the domain experts, so that they can come up with data solutions that can help the specific verticals, whether that's marketing or product or operation.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. It's like for different stages, you can have different reporting structure, and it really depends on like how we view data and the data's role, right? Like if data's role is more like helping the business to operate, there's one solution, probably like, reporting into BUs. And then if we think about data as like the core competitive edge, it's like, how do we actually use data that we have to either create new products or create new like added value for the company, or leveraging the data in like a bigger way, and potentially think about creating like a head of data role that's elevate that into more strategic importance.
Agree.
Cool.
Yeah, I was adding one of the maybe a little side story. I think I read from one of the channels I saw. I think someone was posting the story about a company was hiring a new CMO, and the CMO was asking the analyst team reporting to the CMO to run a media mix, and the data was contradicting with the strategy the CMO wants to play big, and then the CMO decided to fire the whole analytics team.
Wow. Which company?
So, I don't know. I cannot disclose that even if I do. So, but this is a. I do think there is probably a need to come up with some guidance on how to structure the data team. One is because, as Leslie mentioned, right, even a company like Stripe, like Hyper, I know it's a very hyper data driven. It still is testing different things, and where things are, I think we didn't touch on is where the team sits is one thing, right? But it often causes a lot of conflict of interest, right? There are a lot of the people to deal with. It's not just the data. Data people has to really observe and tread it carefully. I think that was a very point. Yeah, that was a very extreme situation, but in that sense, right? So naturally, you would be sitting on the side who you report to, right? How to mitigate the situation where there may be some conflict of interest, right? What do you
100%. I remember.
I don't agree with your LTV, right?
100%. I remember. So when I was at the Athletics, I was reporting to the CEO. So me and Alex was actually chatting about this, and then he was like, we were talking about how do we want to place, because some of the data efforts is not under my team. I have a centralized team. And then we were talking about the situation, and then we want to centralize all the data analysts to be under my team and then reporting to him, so that there's nobody's cheating on reporting. So we have an objective view. There you go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. The storytelling can be different, right? Depending on who is presenting. So.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We have like 10 minutes left. If you have any questions from the audience, feel free to type it in the comment. And my question is like from both of you, like having worked with so many companies, like what are like some of the best practices, what worked well, and some of the pitfalls that you want to advise companies to avoid?
So, Chloe, you first, and I'll follow.
looking at my notes. Sorry, guys, if you see me looking away. Some of we touch on this quite a bit. I think thinking about data efforts earlier is definitely one of the best advice. Usually, if you have one takeaway from this meeting, I would say that's something. Really think about structuring. Have a structured data efforts earlier. The analogy I would think about is like data and design team has a lot of similarities. If you have if you think about, you have a bunch of segmented design efforts, your site, your website, your app will look very fragmented. You don't have a unanimous design. It's the same thing with the data efforts. You need to think about centralized data efforts early on. The other thing I have is around measuring the right things. I have talked to a lot of the early stage company going under this as well, falling into this trap as well. It's that lots of people tend to measure something that's either easy to measure or easy to reporting on, but a lot of those tend to be vanity measures. And you really want your data, whatever you measure, your KPIs, to reflect and help you to understand your progress toward your goals. So really think hard on what is exactly the measurement that can help me to understand where I am, where do I stand toward the goal. I actually wrote an example because I was looking at this the other day, or I was listening to this in the podcast discussion the other day. It was talking about how Japan in 2023 has one of the worst year in GDP per capita. They actually roll back to 20 years ago in GPT per capita. So if you look at that, you would think, oh, Japan is actually in a very bad state right now. Their economy is falling down. Like the people must be very unhappy, but their happiness index is actually one of the highest compared to the last 20 years. So this is, again, like, this is examples of you can interpret things in many different ways, but make sure that what you measure reflects what you care about for your business. Yeah.
Yeah, Chloe, you said about like the vanity metrics and what do we actually track, like plus 1,000. What are some of the vanity metrics that you see companies track, and some of like what do you think are some of the key metrics that they should track instead?
Oh, I think this is really depending on the company goal. For example, if your goal is to say, I want to, honestly, I would say one of the thing about growth efforts, one of the vanity metrics that I dislike the most is the when you run the TV ads, there's lots of vendors are reporting TV impressions, like audience impression for you, which is a huge vanity metrics. You can see billions of viewers viewing your ads, but nobody really actually pay attention, right? That's a huge vanity metric. But if you think about vanity metrics, some people may think traffic or site traffic is a vanity measurement. But if your goal is, I want to drive more traffic, drive more attention to my site, that's actually will be an okay metrics. But if your goal is to have high quality or high quality marketing leads, right? Then you need to track the quality, which is the retentions or the conversion rate. It could be engagement rate with your products. So really depending on the business objective.
Yeah, I agree. Plus one is like traffic is not by itself good or bad or vanity or not vanity. It's like how you look at this data. There's different layers of metrics you want to track. There's like North Star metrics, and there's like KPIs that you want to track, or like leading or lagging indicators you want to track for your data. And in the example of a traffic, it's like, yes, like more traffic probably means more people are getting to know about us. And then also looking at the conversion rate from traffic to leads or from user sign up, and combine them together, tell a better picture than not. Bei, what do you think? What are some of the do's and don'ts and pitfalls to avoid?
Yeah, do's are, if I speak specifically, talk about early stage, is do's is definitely in the early stages. I have to be very adaptable and prioritize effort accordingly. For example, when I started the journey in Grammarly B2C, where we spend a 9-digit every year on marketing spend and manage 30+ channels, we immediately identified the first media mix to be a big win. So we spent $50K, generated over $10 million, right? Incremental value. Whereas if I move to the B2B side, it was very early stage, right? We doubled down on the data quality. We couldn't even track the Salesforce conversion very carefully. So it's not about any project is better than the other one. So I think sometimes highly technical folks tend to pick the favorite projects, right? Depending on the technicality. But from the outcome standpoint, sometimes the data quality, right, sorting out data cleaning is even more important than other things. Has a bigger business impact. So it's really try to be very neutral, no feelings, no emotion, right? Outcome driven tend to work well in that situation. And the other thing that's working well is actually, this is probably addressing one of the Maggie's questions, right? What can the team expect from the data team? I actually do see a lot of companies do well by like not to rely too much on the data person. I mean, it's good as a data person, I think it's important, right? But actually with the help, with data pipeline being easier, with the tool being easier, a few years back, I think one bad habits I think people get to is whenever they hire a data person, they tend to rely on that data person to give me the reports, give me the data, give me some, or tell me what to do, right? You have the data, you tell me what to do. That's it kind of gets too lazy. But right now, a few startup, they do well is they don't hire a data person. Not trying to say this job family is going away, right? But there are enough of the means to let the business operator to where the data had enough, so they can delay the process of hiring big engineer team and delay the process hiring a data science team and get the business going a little bit longer, and that tend to work well for very early stage companies too. So anything else? And the last thing is really adding the data infrastructure, right? It just yeah, I still think there is no playbook for the data team org, right? That was one, Chloe, right? Feel probably a good playbook material. The other one is the data infrastructure. It is all over the place. So for any company that's growing up, it's worth at least doing some research, doing some of the avoid some pitfalls. If any mistake in that infrastructure can just cost a big time, huge time. I'm still waking up from some of the nightmares from the Grammarly Databricks transition. Sometimes it's their life can be easier. That's all I can say.
And the thing I would add is like advice for marketing leaders is like have data hire be one of your first hires. It's like if I think about like how I hire for a very early stage is like product marketing, growth marketing, data was like my third hire. So it was like very important, probably at the same time as the growth person. And then for like growth stage and more mature stage, I would want to have dedicated data people, like regardless who they ultimately report to, I want a dedicated resource for data. And that's how important that is. Cool. All right. Thank you everyone for such a like engaging conversation. And I learned a lot. It's great to have both Bei and Chloe. So next week we'll continue at the same time, also in the same format. So hopefully all of you can join the conversation as well. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Have a good weekend.